I am the woman who fled her own wedding, leaving 400 guests waiting. But I ran because I discovered a clause in the marriage contract. They forced on me a legal trap designed to steal my inheritance the moment I said, I do. My name is Clara Sterling, and this is the story of how I took back my family's vineyard by crashing their most important party of the year. The Sterling Vineyards Harvest Gala is the crown jewel of the Napa Valley social calendar. Under a canopy of stars and glittering lights, my father, Richard, and my brother, Harrison, were on stage, charming investors and partners. They were moments away from announcing a massive corporate deal that would secure their control over the winery my great-aunt Eleanor had spent her life building. They didn't see me until I was halfway to the stage. I didn't run. I walked, my steps deliberate. The live orchestra faltered, then fell silent as a ripple of confusion spread through the crowd. I took the microphone from my brother's stunned hand. "Good evening," I said, my voice clear and calm. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but the partnership you're about to announce is based on a fraudulent claim of ownership." Before they could react, a giant screen behind them flickered to life, not with a corporate logo, but with the wise, unyielding face of my great-aunt, recorded weeks before her death. Her voice echoed across the silent vineyard, denouncing them for their greed. Then, my lawyer stepped forward with her true, notarized will. This wasn't just business. This was one of those raw, unfiltered family revenge stories best served with a vintage Cabernet. It's amazing how quickly polite smiles curdle when confronted with reality. If you've ever had to be the one to interrupt the perfect family performance with a dose of hard truth, just type truth in the comments below. Let's see how many of us have had to pull back that curtain. To understand the bomb I had just detonated, you have to understand the brilliant, formidable woman who built it. My great-aunt Eleanor Sterling. She was the matriarch who had turned this valley's rocky soil into a world-renowned vineyard with her own two hands. And in her final months, from her study overlooking the vines, she saw the rot that had taken root in her own family. She watched my father, Richard, and my brother, Harrison, prioritize profit over quality, obsessed with image while letting the soul of the vineyard wither. She saw how they dismissed me, the trained viticulturist who loved the land, and my fiancé Ben, whose expertise they saw not as an asset, but as a threat to their corner-cutting methods. So, she orchestrated a posthumous chess game. She created a test will, a decoy that would leave my family a generous share of the company's profits, but no actual control. It was the perfect bait. She predicted that the mere scent of money would be enough to make them reveal their true, greedy natures, especially in how they would try to manipulate my upcoming wedding. The last time I saw her, she held my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "The land tells the truth, Clara," she'd said, her eyes sharp. "Listen to it. Trust your instincts." She didn't tell me about her full plan, but she armed me with her trust. My great-aunt knew a bitter truth. An inheritance is often the sharpest tool for revealing a person's real character. It's a painful thing to watch, when you realize money means more to your family than principles do. If you've ever seen someone's true colors come out the moment a will is mentioned, just type "proven true" in the comments. My great-aunt Eleanor passed peacefully 2 months later. At the reading of her will, the mood in the room was electric. Just as she'd predicted, the promise of inheriting millions changed everything. Suddenly, my fiancé, Ben Carter, the working-class sommelier my family had dismissed, was their most cherished asset. My father, who once scoffed at Ben's modest San Francisco restaurant, now clapped him on the back, calling him son and inviting him to exclusive cellar tastings. My brother, Harrison, began talking about synergizing our brands. It was a masterclass in hypocrisy, a sudden, cloying warmth that felt colder and more dangerous than their previous disdain. Then, the invasion of our wedding began. Our plan for a small, rustic ceremony in the vineyard's old stone barrel room was systematically dismantled. "Darling, it's charming, but not for a Sterling wedding," my mother declared, announcing she had already booked the vineyard's massive, impersonal corporate event center instead. Our intimate guest list of 75 was replaced with a list of 400 of their business associates and social rivals. The farm-to-table caterer we loved was dismissed in favor of a flashy molecular gastronomy chef who was famous for his foam creations. Every authentic choice we had made was bulldozed and replaced with something bigger, shinier, and emptier. And every time I pushed back, I was met with a soft, dismissive wall of their manipulation. "We're just so excited for you," my mother would say. "You're just feeling the wedding stress, honey," my brother would add. They were gaslighting me, making me feel like I was the ungrateful, difficult one for wanting my own wedding. I was living in a nightmare disguised as a favor, and Eleanor's test was playing out exactly as she had foreseen. The wedding takeover was infuriating, but I tried to tell myself it was just their obsession with appearances. Then came the pre-wedding tasting event, and I realized their goal wasn't just control. It was demolition. Ben had arranged a beautiful event at his restaurant in San Francisco for wine critics and industry influencers. The highlight was a special flight of wines from small, independent producers he championed, a showcase of his passion and expertise. His professional reputation was on the line, and he was glowing with pride. But when he poured a prized Pinot Noir from a small Oregon winery we both adored, the mood in the room shifted. A famous critic swirled his glass, sniffed it with a look of disgust, and announced to the silent room, "This is undrinkable. Tastes like cheap, sweetened vinegar." Ben, horrified, tasted it. His face went pale. It was awful. The humiliation was immediate and absolute, a public execution of his credibility. Later, as we were packing up in stunned silence, a young sommelier pulled Ben aside. "Sir," he whispered, "I saw your brother-in-law, Harrison, come in before the event with a private case of wine. He went down to the cellar alone. I didn't think anything of it until now." The truth hit us like a physical blow. Harrison had deliberately swapped the real bottles with cheap, counterfeit wine. He had tried to professionally destroy my fiancé in a room full of his most respected peers. To attack me is one thing, but to attack his passion, his livelihood, that was a declaration of war. It's a special kind of pain when your own family tries to sabotage the success of someone you love. If you've ever felt that sting of jealousy from the people who should have been cheering for you, just type "I get it" in the comments. After the counterfeit wine incident, we knew we were no longer just dealing with wedding saboteurs. We were dealing with enemies. We decided to go through with the ceremony, to play their game until we understood the endgame. The morning of my wedding felt like a surrender. I was a doll being dressed by strangers, my face painted, my hair pulled into a severe style I hated, all for a party that felt like a corporate branding event, not a celebration of love. An hour before I was meant to walk down the aisle, my father's lawyer appeared with a stack of final documents to sign. "Just a formality," he said with a slick smile. But my great-aunt's voice echoed in my head. "Trust your instincts." I read every single word, and there it was, buried in dense legalese on page 12 of the marriage contract, a clause stating that in the event of a divorce initiated by me, full and irrevocable control of any of my inherited assets would revert to a trust managed by the family estate, with my brother, Harrison, as the sole executor. It was a perfectly crafted legal cage, designed to either trap me in a miserable marriage or steal my inheritance if I ever tried to leave. I showed it to Ben. His face went grim. "This was never about a wedding," he said. "It's about owning you." That was the final straw. This wasn't a marriage. It was a hostile takeover. While my mother was coordinating the string quartet and my father was greeting the governor of California, Ben and I slipped out a service exit at the back of the winery. I hiked up the ridiculous $1,000 ball gown, jumped into his old, reliable pickup truck, and we sped down the long gravel driveway, leaving behind a 400-guest spectacle and a family waiting at an altar I had no intention of ever reaching. We drove south for 5 hours, the manicured vineyards of Napa giving way to the wild, dramatic cliffs of the Big Sur coastline. My ridiculous wedding dress was bunched up around my waist. My perfect hair was a mess of pins and falling curls. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. I directed Ben down an unmarked, overgrown dirt road, a path I hadn't traveled in over a decade. Tucked away in a grove of ancient redwoods, overlooking a secluded cove where sea otters played in the surf, was the cabin. It was small, rustic, built of cedar and stone. This was my great-aunt Eleanor's secret escape, a place she called the Perch. She had secretly put it in a private trust for me when I was 16, telling me, "Every woman needs a place the world can't find her." My family knew of it only as Eleanor's folly and had long forgotten its existence. It was completely off-grid, with solar panels on the roof and a well for water. It was untraceable. It was safe. As Ben lit a fire in the old stone fireplace, the suffocating pressure of the past few months began to recede, replaced by a quiet, cold resolve. This wasn't just a hideout, it was a sanctuary. It was our headquarters. We had escaped their gilded battlefield and found our own. We were disconnected from their world of manipulation and control, surrounded only by the sound of the crashing waves and the whispering redwoods. In the quiet of that hidden cabin, with the man I truly chose, we stopped running. And we started planning our war. The first morning at the cabin, a place of silent redwoods and crashing waves, we began our search. Eleanor was a woman of secrets, but she always said the best ones were hidden in plain sight. My eyes fell on an old, leather-bound book of poetry on the mantelpiece, one she used to read to me. Taped inside the cover was a small, ornate key, next to a verse she had underlined. Truth, like the sun, will always find a way to rise. The key opened a false bottom in her old oak writing desk. Inside was a tablet and a handwritten letter. My dearest Clara, it began. If you are reading this, they have forced your hand. I am so sorry. I hoped they would choose better, but I did not bet on it. This tablet contains my testimony. The truth is your shield and your sword. Use it wisely. All my love, E. With trembling hands, we turned it on. It was a video diary. Dozens of files, dated over the last 6 months of her life. And there she was. Eleanor, looking weaker with each entry, but her eyes burning with an unyielding fire. She spoke directly to the camera, as if to me, detailing my father's and brother's financial mismanagement, showing internal reports they thought she'd never see about their plans to cheapen the wine and sell off the most precious parcels of land. It was her final, brilliant act of defiance, a posthumous deposition from a matriarch protecting her legacy. Watching those videos, Eleanor was no longer just a memory. She was in the room with us, a ghost armed with evidence, passing the torch. Her final act was one of fierce, protective love. There's nothing quite as powerful as a message from someone you've lost, proving they were looking out for you all along. If you've ever felt that connection, that guidance from the past, just type always here in the comments. I'd like to feel that with you. We spent hours absorbing the video diaries, a masterclass in my family's treachery narrated by the ghost in the machine. The very last file on the tablet was different. It was labeled simply My Legacy. This was it. The final message. On the screen, Eleanor looked frail, but her voice was as strong and clear as the finest crystal. Clara, she said, her eyes seeming to look right through the camera and into my soul. If you are watching this, my test has proven what I feared. Now, for my true and final will. She took a breath and laid out her brilliant, final plan. She wasn't leaving me just money. She was leaving me everything. 100% ownership and sole, irrevocable control of Sterling Vineyards, the land, the brand, the entire operation. But it came with a sacred condition. I had to vow to protect the land, to prioritize the quality of the wine over the quantity of the profit, and to be a custodian of her life's work, not just its owner. To my parents and my brother, she left a modest annual trust, enough for a life without struggle, but not enough for a life without character, as she put it with a thin, satisfied smile. It was a legal masterstroke, giving them too much to successfully sue, but far too little to continue their lavish lifestyle. Finally, she gave me the key, a code phrase to deliver to her lawyer, Brett. Tell him the truest vintage requires patience, she instructed. He will know what to do. The video ended. The room was silent, save for the crackling fire. I felt the immense weight of her trust settle on my shoulders. This was never just about revenge. It was about becoming the heir she always believed I could be. Eleanor's final message was the spark that lit the fuse. The next morning, our grief and shock had crystallized into a cold, clear purpose. From our clifftop cabin that felt like the edge of the world, we launched our counteroffensive. I called Brett, the lawyer. Brett, it's Clara Sterling, I said, my voice steady. I'm calling because the truest vintage requires patience. I heard an audible sigh of relief on the other end of the line. "Thank God, Clara," he said. "I've been waiting. I have everything ready." He told us he would file the true will immediately, which would legally freeze the entire estate and halt any pending deals. Our job, he said, was to gather evidence of our family's malicious behavior since the wedding. We didn't have to look far. My family, panicked by our disappearance, had gone on the attack. Harrison had given an interview to a Napa gossip blog, painting me as emotionally volatile and Ben as an opportunist. My mother was posting vague, concerned messages about my mental health struggles on Facebook. They were trying to build a public narrative to have me declared incompetent, the last desperate move to invalidate the will. But they were clumsy. Every manipulative voicemail they left, begging me to come home for treatment, was recorded. Every slanderous social media post was screenshotted. We collected affidavits from the wedding vendors they had bullied. They thought they were building a cage to trap me, but they were actually building their own prison, one calculated falsehood at a time. There is a quiet, powerful satisfaction in turning your enemy's weapons against them. If you've ever had to patiently collect the receipts and build your case, just type evidence in the comments below. We know that feeling of preparing to strike. We spent 2 weeks in our Big Sur fortress, a strange honeymoon of legal strategy and encrypted emails. We were building an airtight case, but I wanted more than just a quiet win in a courtroom. I wanted them to face a public reckoning for their hypocrisy. Then, a call from Brett gave us the perfect stage. "They're moving faster than we thought," Brett said, his voice grim. "Richard and Harrison are fast-tracking a partnership with Sinbev." My stomach dropped. Sinbev was a corporate vulture, a soulless, multinational beverage conglomerate, famous for buying prestigious brands, stripping them for parts, and replacing quality ingredients with cheap, synthetic substitutes. Handing Sterling Vineyards to them was the ultimate betrayal of everything my great-aunt Eleanor had ever stood for. It was sacrilege. "And it gets worse," Brett continued. "They're planning to announce and sign the deal publicly, on stage, at the Harvest Gala in 3 weeks." I looked at Ben, and in that moment, we both knew. This was it. This was our chance. In their blinding arrogance, my father and brother were creating the perfect trap for themselves. They were assembling the press, their most important investors, and the entire Napa Valley elite into one room to witness what they thought would be their crowning achievement. They were so proud of the deal that would destroy Eleanor's legacy that they wanted to sign it in front of the world. The Harvest Gala was no longer just a party. It was a stage, custom-built for the final act of this family tragedy. And they had just handed us the script. The night of the Harvest Gala was electric with the energy of 1,000 whispered deals and false smiles. Ben and I arrived not as fugitives, but as invited guests, using tickets Brett had secured for us under a different name. We slipped into the back of the massive pavilion, hidden in the shadows as my father and brother took the stage to a round of thunderous applause. They looked like kings surveying their domain, smug and victorious. "Today marks a new era for Sterling Vineyards," my father announced, his voice booming with false gravitas. "An era of bold new partnerships." He gestured to the CEO of Sinbev, who joined him on stage, a contract and a pen ready in his hand. That was my cue. I started walking down the main aisle, just as I had planned. The crowd parted before me, a wave of shock and disbelief rippling through the elegantly dressed guests. I reached the stage just as my father was about to sign. "I don't think so," I said, taking the microphone from the stand. "This vineyard is not yours to sell." Before he could utter a single word of protest, the massive screen behind him lit up, not with the Sinbev logo, but with the face of my great-aunt Eleanor. Her final video diary played, her voice clear and condemning, laying bare their greed and incompetence for all to see. As her video ended, Brett Jenkins walked onto the stage from the opposite side, holding up the true, legally filed will. As the executor of the final will of Eleanor Sterling, he announced, "I can confirm that 100% of Sterling Vineyards belongs to its rightful heir, Clara Sterling." The Sinbev CEO dropped his pen, staring in horror as his multi-million-dollar deal evaporated before his very eyes. My father and brother were frozen, trapped in the spotlight of their own public humiliation. The Harvest Gala coup was the end of their reign. There was no legal battle. The evidence was too absolute, the public humiliation too complete. My father and brother simply faded from Napa society, forced to live off the scraps of a fortune they thought was theirs. And in the quiet that followed their spectacular disgrace, Ben and I began the real work. Not just taking back a vineyard, but rebuilding a legacy. 3 months later, we had our real wedding. Not in the massive, impersonal event center, but in the old stone barrel room, surrounded by 60 of our closest friends and the rich, earthy smell of aging oak. It was simple, it was real, it was ours. Today, Sterling Vineyards is returning to its roots. I spend my days in the fields, sleeves rolled up, implementing the sustainable, organic practices Eleanor had always dreamed of. Ben works with our team in the cellar, his unparalleled palate and passion guiding us back to the world-class quality my family had abandoned for easy profit. We are partners in every sense of the word, cultivating a business and a life of integrity. This whole ordeal, this messy, painful family revenge story, taught me that a family, like a vineyard, needs careful tending. Sometimes you have to prune away the diseased branches, no matter how old or established they are, to let the rest of the vine breathe and thrive. A true legacy isn't just handed down, it's cultivated, season after season, with truth. Thank you for being part of this story. If you believe that a real legacy is built on passion and integrity, not just bloodlines, then I invite you to subscribe. Join our community as we continue to celebrate what is authentic and true, one bottle and one story at a time.